Have you ever watched someone disappear right before your eyes? Now I know that's kind of a crazy question. Well, I have, and that's what this story is about. President Mindy, functionaries, collegial Toastmasters, and honored guests. Years ago, I watched the life of a close personal friend be stolen from them, bit by bit and piece by piece. And I'll tell you about him in just a moment and what I learned from that entire experience. But at that time, it caused me to ask myself two questions that today I consider two of the most important questions I've ever asked myself. And I'm going to ask you those same questions. I bet at least one of them you've never even remotely contemplated. I want you to listen to them intently, think about them deeply, because your answers could lead to a profound shift in your perspective. So are you ready for them? Question number one. What do you consider to be your single most defining characteristic or trait? Now, you may have more than one, but each of us likely have one, and they're, for the most part, probably different. For some, it could be athleticism or fitness. For others, income, occupation, prestige. It could be appearance. The list could be endless. But for most of us, there are one or a few things that we hold close to our hearts that give us our sense of self. Question number two, and this is one I bet you've never considered. What would you do if it were suddenly taken away from you? How would you handle it, and who would you then be? And that brings me back to Paul. Almost universally, he was considered a Renaissance man. He was a singer with a big, booming, beautiful voice. He was an accomplished pianist, a private pilot, a fisherman, a skier, a father, grandfather, husband. He was also a neurosurgeon and the chief of staff of one of the largest departments in that area. But that's not what made Paul special. What made Paul special was his sense of kindness, his smile, his humility, and willingness to go out of his way to do whatever needed to be done at any given time to make someone's day just a little bit better. Paul's decline began insidiously, first with a little bit of scratchiness in his throat and an inability to reach those high notes that he'd been accustomed to. However, shortly after that, he was diagnosed with an aggressive lymphoma, and the combination of progression of that disease and the treatment that was required led to him losing almost any physical attribute he had. He lost his ability to hike, to camp, to sing, to play music. He even lost the ability to perform as a neurosurgeon. But it wasn't what I watched him lose that taught me a lesson. It's what I watched him choose to maintain. In other words, Paul lost all of those external things, but what he didn't lose was his essence, his kindness, his humility, his smile. And still, despite being relegated to a wheelchair, his willingness to go out of his way to still make someone else's day better. Now, as I reflected on that experience and having the honor of being able to be asked to speak at his funeral service, I realized it was easy to talk about him because what Paul never lost was his essence as a human being. Regardless of situation or circumstance, he knew who he was, and he was true to himself. And to this day, as I think about him, which I often do, I reflect on how easy it is to look at all those external manifestations of what we think defines who we are without recognizing that it's those internal traits of our kindness and willingness to reach out to others that could really define us. When I was in practice, I used to suggest to several patients that when faced with an illness, someone has two choices: to lament what was lost or to make the best of what remained. Paul always made the best of what he had in front of him. And as I remember that, it's caused me to frequently ask myself, who am I? What do I allow to define myself? And perhaps as you look in the mirror tomorrow, you can ask yourself, who are you? Thank you.